All right, forensics, welcome to day one of the COVID-19 remote lesson plans. This is an example of the computer parts analogy that you were doing today. Uh, I will be comparing the computer as a whole to a school, and your assignment is to pick something out, something that's not a school, that has parts, just like a school has parts, and to compare a computer and its parts to the parts of whatever it is that you pick. You can pick a sports team, or they're just generally a football team or a specific team, a TV show and its characters and settings, anything that you want, except for a school, because that's the analogy that I'm using. So in your analogy, you are creating the whole analogy, and then the different parts within that analogy are an analogy for software, the chassis, the power supply, the motherboard, the system bus, the central processing unit or CPU, random access memory or RAM, and the hard disk drive or HDD, as well as output devices and the internet. All right, as I said, I'm going to be comparing the computer to a school. So if the entire computer is a whole school, then I would say that the software are like teachers. What software does is it takes information that's stored somewhere on the hard drive and presents it to the user in a way that is useful. And just like there are different types of teachers, there are different types of software, and hopefully we all process information and present it in a way that is useful, and we all have different functions. And in case you're wondering, yes, it is me, and yes, I am wearing a wetsuit, a snorkel, and swim fins. I was lecturing about the ocean and decided to get dressed up for it. The chassis of a computer is like the actual school building itself. The chassis of a computer is what holds all of the different parts of the computer, just as the school building holds all of the different parts of the school. The power supply for a computer is like the school bus. The school bus brings students to the school, which is the energy that makes the school run, and the um, power supply for the computer brings the electricity that makes the. In a computer, the motherboard is what connects all of the different parts. Everything, from the output devices, the CPU, the RAM. This is where all of the different things get connected. So that's sort of like the classroom in a school where there are teachers, which are the software, there's output devices, which is the students, and everything kind of gets tied together in the classrooms. The system bus in a computer is what sends information from one place to another, from the hard drive to the CPU, from the RAM to the hard drive to the RAM, the hard drive and the RAM to the output devices, wherever anything needs to go. It goes through the system bus, so that is like the hallways for a school, which send students and teachers and anything else that needs to move in a school. The hallways move it around. The CPU, I said, is like the principal of a school. So the central processing unit is what actually runs sort of the logical processes whenever you are doing anything that requires the computer to think. It's the CPU that's actually doing the thinking of what the computer does. And it runs and is in charge of telling everything in the computer exactly what software to use and when to use it, what file to retrieve from the hard disk drive, etc. And so, just as the principal of a school tells everyone what to do and when to do it and is generally in charge of making things run, uh, the CPU is like a principal. RAM stands for random access memory, and that's the information or the programs, the software that a computer is using sort of like right now in this instant. When you open a program up, that program takes up some of the RAM. When you actually close the program, when you quit, that program no longer uses any RAM. It's what the computer is actively using in that moment. Just as whatever is in these students' backpacks is whatever they are working on in that moment. The assignments that are due that day, or they'll be working on at home, and hopefully, just as the RAM sort of gets refreshed, every time you turn the computer off, your backpacks get refreshed every time you leave school, or maybe they don't, but that's kind of the idea. The hard disk drive stores all of the information in a more permanent way. RAM is temporary, it's what you're using right now. The hard disk drive, you can save something to your hard disk drive and use it years later. So that's like the library in a school that stores information sometimes for years before it gets used again. The output devices on a computer are something like the speakers or a monitor, something that is displaying all of the inner workings of that computer and sending it out to the world. And that's like students in a school. All of the teachers and the principal and everything that goes inside a school is all designed to get knowledge into students who then take that knowledge out into the world. And then the internet is a whole bunch of different computers connected together. So I said that that was like a school district. So for OCBTS, it's like ALPS and MATES and PAA all sort of working together, and there's definitely transmission of information from one school to another, just as there's transmission of information from one computer to another over the internet. So have fun creating your own computer analogies. Hopefully this keeps you from getting too bored on just day one of what could be a very long break from actually seeing each other in person at ALPS.